Welcome to Barnyard Language, honest talk about running farms and raising families. We are Caite and Arlene, an Iowa sheep farmer and an Ontario dairy farmer, with 6 kids, 2 husbands, and a whole lot of chaos between us.
While this is a podcast for farm families, sometimes our content isn't for the whole family. So kick off your boots, reheat your coffee, and join us for some Barnyard Language.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Barnyard Language. I would ask Caite what's going on in Iowa, but I have a feeling that she's not there. So, Caite, what's going on wherever you are?
Does this not look like my normal view, Arlene? For anyone who's just listening to this, I'm on a boat in Sweden. I'm not on the farm. So, there's that. Although we did pay good American dollars to go to a sheep farm this morning to look at other people's sheep, which is what farmers do on vacation.
And do they sound the same as yours?
A slight accent. Yes. No, they seemed about the same, woollier than ours. But other than that, I think things on the farm are good. I haven't heard any different, so that's good.
So what are you doing on a boat in Sweden?
My friend Sarah, she's over there, and I are on a 2-week knitting cruise and going around the Baltic. So we've been to Amsterdam, Denmark, Sweden, Estonia, Finland, Germany.
We go to Poland tomorrow.
And back to Germany. And then some more Denmark. And then I'll probably come home before my husband loses his mind. Poor man. We're having a good time. Lots of Canadians. Lots and lots of Canadians. So we're making friends.
Perfect. That's what we like to hear. And what does one do on a knitting cruise other than knit and look at sheep?
Drink old fashions. And knit. That's basically it.
That sounds about right.
We've seen some old churches. We've seen a lot of yarn stores. We've seen a lot of ocean. We've seen a lot of Canadians. That's about it.
She's so succinct. Normally we can talk about the weather for 20 minutes, but tell me about your 2-week cruise. There's knitting and Canadians.
It's wet. Lots of ocean. I don't know. Sarah, have we done anything exciting?
Are there classes or you're just teaching yourself to knit? I don't know.
Oh yes, no, we are taking classes with a Canadian, interestingly.
Is your suitcase already full or are you shipping some of it home?
Don't judge me. I cannot confirm or deny whether there is a high likelihood of us having more luggage on the way home.
Well, I mean, that just makes sense.
But we're getting some gorgeous local wool, so that's been fun.
New projects.
Took some pictures of tractors today, finally. Finally saw some. So, there's that. Okay, now can I ask about what you're up to?
Yes, you're allowed to ask what I'm up to.
So, sorry, I've eaten way too much, and now I'm sitting in the sun.
That's what I was waiting for. The cruise food. I've never been on a cruise, but I hear the food is top notch.
It's good, and there's a lot of it, and they'll keep bringing it to you. The ship's captain sent someone down to our stateroom with a cupcake for my birthday, so that's pretty cool.
Oh, happy birthday. I will admit I forgot about that. But you were on a cruise, so I don't feel too bad.
Yeah, it's okay. I almost forgot about it. Yes, how dare you forget about me and my first world problems. No, it's been fun. We're having a good time. How are things at your place?
Well, I almost feel guilty admitting it, but planting is done, which is very, very exciting for everyone here. We actually got done in a pretty short window of time between cold and rain. We don't own our own planter anymore, so we had custom guys come in, and they were efficient and have very large equipment that we could not afford to own, and so they got all our planting done in a few days, and we managed to get that powered through. They even finished up some of our groundwork because our tillage equipment broke on us, so they brought that as well. So bonus for people who have large equipment who can be very efficient and get all the work done. But it's great to have seeds in the ground, and it's supposed to get warm, and there's a decent amount of rain, and so all the things are happening that we want at this stage of the seeds, and we will now just impatiently watch things sprout. the discussions around show season have already started. It's only May, but all the 4-H clubs are in full swing. And so this is the time of year where there's lots of discussion about who's going to take which calf and who looks good today and who doesn't look good today, and if they're eating enough and if they're going to grow enough, and how we think they might look in November by the time the Royal comes around, which is many months away. But June 1st is the deadline for picking a calf. So I'm sure I don't actively participate in these discussions, but I will be the observer in a lot of these discussions around between my daughter and my husband and all the 4-H kids who are trying to strategize what their show chances will be for the season. What else is going on? Grass cutting has started, so the teen boys are hard at it. I have been bumped out of grass cutting for now, which is fine. I was told by an empty nester a while ago that it comes back, but I will enjoy the season that I'm in where they are mostly happy to do that job for us. And what else? We're getting, our school doesn't end until the end of June. So I know that there's a lot of other parents who are in the chaos of, the last month of school. But we've got some time, although prom is coming up for number 2. So he and my husband went and picked out a whole outfit. So that is exciting. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. We weren't sure if he was going to want to attend prom, but he and some friends are going. And so we're excited that he's doing that. And it's on they're doing a boat cruise this year. This is kind of a normal rite of passage in our province. The province next to us, the drinking age is a year lower than ours. And so a common prom activity is to take a boat cruise on the river that separates the two provinces. And so if you board on or you cross over onto the other side, then people who are 18 can legally consume alcohol. So that is part of many of the local high school prom experiences. So that's what they'll be doing for prom night. But get to do a bunch of pictures here in our local town first. So that'll be nice to see him and all of his buddies all dressed up. And I guess that's the main excitement lately. So why don't we go ahead and introduce our guest for the week, and Katie can get back to cruise life.
Yeah. Those old fashions aren't going to drink themselves, Arlene. So.
That is right. I mean, how many old fashions can you have and still continue to knit? Have you hit that limit yet?
Well, I had one last night and I was still knitting pretty okay. I'm going to guess the limit is there's a guy named Walter up in the Crow's Nest. If you ever get the chance, any of our listeners, to take a cruise on Holland America, you can look for Walter up in the Crow's Nest. He mixes a very stout, shall we say, old-fashioned. So I have the feeling that 2 would probably be my limit as far as still being able to walk, even, perhaps.
She does this really small too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Knitting wouldn't be the only thing that would go.
There was also quite a discussion as to whether an old-fashioned counts as a smoothie because there's fruit in it. I maintain that it does.
Okay. Agree to disagree.
All right.
All right. Enjoy yourself. Our goal as podcasters is to create a program that makes you feel less alone as a farming, ranching, or homesteading parent, but we can't do it alone.
Supporting Barnyard Language on Patreon helps us cover production costs and ensures the future of the show, but you'll also gain access to exclusive perks and behind-the-scenes content.
Your support enables us to continue bringing you the thought-provoking conversations and inspiring stories week after week. So if you find value in what we're doing and want to be part of the Barnyard community, head over to patreon.com/barnyardlanguage and choose a tier that suits you.
So welcome back to Barnyard Language, everybody. This is Katie. Arlene is having some technical difficulties, so bear with us because I have never done the intro in 5 seasons, and so this is just what you're going to get this week. I am talking to Anna Pesek, who is a farmer in Iowa. And Anna, we start all of our interviews with the same question, and that question is, what are you growing? So that could be crops and livestock, kids, businesses, whatever else you're up to. So what are you growing?
Great question. I love this introduction. So I am growing pigs, farrow-to-finish, purebred Berkshire hogs. I'm also growing chickens. I'm growing a business. I'm growing alternative supply chains. And I'm also growing a rambunctious toddler.
And how old is your kiddo?
A little over 2.
So you're at the real busy stage.
Maximum busy stage of life, for sure.
Peak busy. I get that.
Peak busy. Yes.
Can you tell our listeners where you are in Iowa?
My wife and I farm in rural Delaware County, so the eastern part of the state.
So you're probably an hour south of us, I think, from Decorah.
Yeah, probably. Like an hour. It's a little bit more than that, but.
And can you tell us roughly how big your farm is, how many hogs you're farrowing to finishing, whatever? I know farmers don't like to talk numbers, but we've had folks on who are backyard, and we've had folks on who are like hundreds of thousands of outback in Australia.
I think it's an important question. We're certainly not a backyard operation at this point. We have grown our sow herd from 2 pigs to 21 sows that are due to farrow this spring. The last few years, we've finished about 100-ish pigs a year because we've been slowly growing that herd. We haven't brought any female pigs in, just bringing a boar in. We're hoping that number grows to 200 plus, but it's been finishing about 100 pigs and then doing a couple thousand birds a year, combination of chickens and turkeys on pasture. And then we also aggregate specifically with a focus on other young and beginning farmers in the state of Iowa. We're partnering with some beef producers. We've partnered with the lamb producer to create markets for their products as well. So when I talk about the size of our business, it's less about acres and more about volume of meat we're moving, and it ain't nothing. Moving a pretty substantial amount of pork and poultry.
And do you work off farm as well?
I work off farm as well, yes.
I hate to say, do you work? Because so many people say, I don't work. And like, if you farm or even you're just running the family, parenting alone has been the hardest thing I've ever done. I'd much rather have a real job. Pays better too. The parenting does not pay very well. So what is your ag background? Are you from Iowa? I feel like everyone from Iowa has more of an ag background just by default.
Yeah, so I am an Iowa transplant. I have been here in the state for about 10 years now. I actually grew up in Massachusetts, so I have a kind of unusual Iowa story, but I've always been involved in agriculture. My grandparents had an apple orchard in California where my dad grew up, but it was sold before I was born. But I grew up with the narratives of his family and now look back and see photos of my grandparents raising their Thanksgiving turkeys on the farm. And I think things actually haven't changed that much. So I always grew up with a narrative around ag. And then I actually studied agriculture when I went to college at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and was very involved. There was a student-run vegetable farm and a sustainable ag program that I was very into. So I got a bachelor's in science degree in agriculture there. And then thought that the path forward for me was working in policy. So I moved to Washington, D.C. right after graduating, thinking that I would work on the Hill doing food and ag policy. Did not like living in D.C. and working on the Hill. And I happened to have a friend who was a farmer in Iowa, a young woman farmer. And so I came to visit a few times. And then 6 months after moving myself to DC, I said, I'm going to try something else out. Typical ambitious 21-year-old of me. And so I packed up my stuff and I moved to Iowa in October 2016. And I never left, wasn't intending to move, but that was that. I met my wife a couple years later and we started Over the Moon in 2019. We farm on the family farm where she grew up in Delaware County. She does have the long-standing background in Iowa ag. So we've brought a unique kind of combination, but have both always been involved in growing in some way.
I actually worked in Massachusetts for a year and change at the Heifer International Farm in Rutland. And
wait, that's so funny.
We probably know some people in common. I would not be surprised.
I spent all my childhoods going there.
We've probably met before then. You're like 14 years younger than I am, so we probably have met.
It had such a profound impact on my life. I'm probably farming because I spent every summer at heifer camp, and then I volunteered when I was in high school. And yeah, it so profoundly shaped my understanding specifically of the importance of animals and livestock farming.
It's why I'm here. So yay, Heifer International. Look at us bringing this together.
Yeah, I grew up right down the road.
So what are some of the ag organizations that you've been involved in and what programs have been important to you besides heifer?
The list is a little bit endless in terms of ag organizations that I've been involved with that have been meaningful for me. When I graduated college, worked briefly for the National Family Farm Coalition, which had a really profound impact on my life. And through them, became involved in many of the other organizations that were birthed out of the 1980s farm crisis. So the Family Farm Defenders, Farm Aid, obviously, Missouri Rural Crisis Center, all have had some type of profound impact on me. Also was very involved in farm worker solidarity work. So with the Coalition of Immokalee Workers and the Alliance for Fair Food out of Florida, was heavily involved in the Student Farm Worker Alliance. And then now, as I've grown and become a business owner and farmer on my own, have been really impacted by some of our local organizations, statewide organizations. So I'm very involved in the Iowa Farmers Union on the political advocacy side of things. And then we've been tremendously supported by some of the technical and educational support through Practical Farmers of Iowa, some of their programming, including the Savings Incentives Program and their farm business mentorship, have been really important for us, as well as the on-farm research cooperators program we've been involved with for a number of years. Also, the Food Finance Institute out of the University of Wisconsin has been super impactful. This past winter, I did just the most incredible week-long strategic business retreat with an organization called Farmpreneurs, which was just so life-changing. And so there is such a plethora of organizations that have just had a tremendous impact, and it is the reason that we've been able to farm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the Savings Incentive Program? We've had Greg and Travis on, and I don't think we ever talked about it. My husband and I have participated in Savings Incentive as well.
So the Savings Incentives Program with Practical Farmers of Iowa is a 2-year-long program where beginning farmers receive technical training and support around creating a viable business plan. And then the second part of that, the savings part, is that the organization, PFI, matches your own savings. When I was in the program, it was a 1-to-1 match. So we saved $2,400 and then we were matched $2,400. We invested that in some type of farm infrastructure. For us, we spent our $4,800 on chicken and turkey transport crates. I can't remember if we bought both of them with that or just one, but it was a really helpful purchase and a bigger upfront cost for us. So doing the 2-year program, developing this business plan, and then being able to make an investment in the farm was really helpful. I believe there has since been a change to even increase the amount of match that they're able to give. So I think especially as prices have gone up on so many things, I'm sure that has been incredibly helpful for the participants of today. I'm sure even my chicken and turkey crates are not the same price as they were 5 years ago. But that was really helpful for us in learning how to create a business plan. I'm sure if I looked back, I would be shocked how different our business is from that first iteration of a business plan we went to create. But it is always helpful to have something formal on paper. And it was a good stepping stone to start figuring out where we were going. I want to say it was 2020. And it was a 2-year program, so I think we got the payout in 2021. So it wasn't too long ago, but.
And everything was so predictable in 2020. I mean, you could have a plan and everything would just totally work out.
I think, too, for us, the Savings Incentive Program was so great because you have that accountability and that extra incentive to save the money, because I know there's always something else that money could go towards. And it can be hard to make the commitment to save it. But if you know that somebody will double your money, it's pretty motivating to keep it in there. And just being able to connect with bankers and mentors and that. I haven't heard of other programs the same.
I think it's a one of a kind in terms of the specific model that they have used. And it's a, long running program. There's now but a lot of graduates, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah, because I want to say we finished in 2016 or 2017, I want to say. We were the second class. So it's been quite a while now. And I know we've talked to Katie, who runs Chop Local. How has that benefited your farm? And I know even as a producer, I've bought meat through Chop Local, and it's been really cool. And that's another really interesting format for things.
Yeah, you had a great episode with Katie. I've really enjoyed working with her over the past few years. So, like many farms, when we started our business in 2019, we were doing a whole lot of everything. So, we were doing horticulture, we had a pretty prolific flower subscription, we were doing sweet corn, we had produce, we had an egg subscription, and we were doing a handful of hogs at that time. And whatnot. But we were doing a lot of everything. So obviously at that point, the technical side of our website, I think we had just a plain Squarespace site at that point, just reflected doing a lot of everything. And so in 2023, we started to narrow our business, realized that it was not sustainable, or nor did we want to continue doing 110 different things. So we started to hone things in, and we said, okay, we actually really want to focus on what we like the most and what we want to scale is our direct-to-consumer meat business. So that's when we connected with Katie initially, and we switched our meat sales onto Chop Local at that point. In part, it was a really great place to start because it was really accessible, and it helped us figure out the model for selling meat. It was pretty straightforward. There was a lot of back-end support. That was a tremendous help. And then Katie was very supportive on the tech side and helped us figure out. I would say still about 70% of our sales are local Eastern Iowa, but the rest is outside of Eastern Iowa. We ship once a week. So they helped us figure out those first steps and the pricing, and they had some USDA grants, so there was some reimbursement money. So it also eased the transition into being a business that was really focused on perishable distribution. Not that flowers and horticulture aren't perishable, but our radius was a lot smaller. So we used the Chop Local platform from 2023, and we actually just shifted in 2025 to a new website because we felt like we had grown to a point where we wanted everything just on one site because we were no longer selling flowers. The first couple years we were still selling flowers, so it felt okay to send people to a different place to buy their meat. At this point, we are just a direct-to-consumer meat business, so we moved towards just having one website, overthemoonmeat.com, where everything is, but have still stayed really connected and do really recommend it as a great place for folks who are new to the direct-to-consumer meat world to get started. There's so many resources, and in general, when I look at tech platforms or options for scaling local food production, I'm always excited when there are local options that are like from Iowa or from other communities where people are boots on the ground, know what's going on versus something coming out of like Silicon Valley. And I'm always happier to put my money into platforms like that. So have been really appreciative of what they've figured out how to build, and yeah, it was really helpful for us.
I think it does really make a difference too when the tools are built by farmers for farmers rather than the ag tech industry is fascinating. There's so much cool work being done, but there aren't a lot of farmers involved in a lot of it. You know, you can make really cool stuff, but if nobody wants to use it or it doesn't work for the way they work, it doesn't matter how cool it is.
I totally agree. Yes, it's always nice when someone is actually a farmer involved.
For some people, they're just farming or they're just running a store or have a more narrow focus. And you have narrowed your focus somewhat in terms of not trying to grow and sell everything. But how do you manage those dueling tasks of production agriculture, but also sales, delivery, marketing, all of the selling part?
I don't know that we have figured this part out. I do think that, how many years are we into business? Like 7 with an ish. We have narrowed things down. I feel so much more realistic in understanding how much time things take, what the day-to-day actually looks like, but it is still really hard. I was telling Kate earlier, like I have an off-farm job to support our health insurance needs and otherwise. We have a 2-year-old, and our business has grown like pretty consistently, some years better than others, but we have been like on an upward trajectory since 2019. Our product mix has changed a lot, but even now, like we're in the first couple months of 2026 have seen we're doing like 170% more sales than we were a year ago. And so that means more deliveries, more distribution, more inventory handling, all the back end. And we have not figured out how to handle navigating all of the things besides that. So we are on a family farm, and although our operation Over the Moon is totally separate and different, like we live down the road from my mother and father-in-law and my two brothers-in-law, so there is a lot of opportunity there for support, especially with childcare and big projects on the farm that take a variety of hands and things like that. So some stuff is only possible because I do feel like we have a village, and that makes a big difference when you're trying to do an ambitious thing that takes a lot of hours of work. But yeah, I mean, we have narrowed down things exponentially, and we are still, I would say, in that narrowing phase. As we evaluate things, even going into 2026, we're like, okay, we have a lot of sows that are going to give birth. Like, how many birds do we raise this year? It's probably not going to be 4,000. And there's been years in the past where we've been like, we need to raise 4,000 chickens and we need to X, Y, and Z. But we're trying to figure out how to make the numbers work without. Sometimes doing too much is also not profitable because you have more issues. So we're still in a honing phase.
And we're all still figuring out that there are only so many hours in the day, as much as we try to pretend that's not true. Yeah. So we ask almost all of our parenting guests to reflect on the time when they first became parents, because it's such a huge life shift. And if you're also working with your partner, then that means the business shifts and your family is changing and all those kinds of things. So what comes to mind when you think about that transition from not having a child to becoming parents?
Oh, I think it changed everything. We often talk about how I actually do think becoming parents made us better farmers because our time became more valuable. Not that your time is not always valuable, but having a child forces some real critical thinking about how you're spending your time. And so it did force some maturing for us as a business and people to be like, okay, I don't want to be making flower bouquets at 9 p.m. for someone to then send me an email that whatever, half of it wilted or something. And that happened not often, but occasionally. I was like, I don't want to be doing that with a child because at 9 o'clock, I can't be doing that. I can't be at the farm at 9 o'clock. And so a lot of it did just shift in terms of real deep thinking. But also it shifted questions around safety and even our physical labor. And we've gotten smarter, right? We don't want to take as many risks. We are so much better at loading hogs now because we have a good system. We're safe. And that came because you're not going to goof around. There's more at risk. But yeah, it was a hard transition, I would say. So I carried our child. And it was hard for me to slow down after giving birth. Like the first 6 weeks, even like of not doing any physical activity were really hard. I wanted to get going and work on the farm. The first day back, we had to load hogs to take to the butcher and they all got out and it was bad. It shifted everything. And now 2 years in, like I think it's still changing every day. Like having a toddler is not the same as having a baby. Like he wants to be running around with us. There's no just waiting around. He wants to be involved. And so that makes you slow down. You do things differently. We spend more time running around the farmyard and greeting all the animals. And sometimes that means less work happens. And that's the season of life we're in. And so things look a little messier. We occasionally make a mistake or something like that. Here we are.
Yeah, that all makes a lot of sense. And the baby who sits still while you do the jobs is not the same as the 2-year-old who wants to help or at least needs to be kept within eyesight while you're doing something that they can't help with. So you alluded to it already, but what does farm work and childcare look like for your family? Because I know every family has to deal with the logistics of all of that too.
So I work remote, and so that gives me the flexibility to not be going into an office every day, which is really helpful. And then again, being on a multi-generational farm does allow for more family support, especially on the childcare front. My son is often with my wife during the day on the farm or at our house, but then also spends a lot of time with his grandparents, which is really wonderful. And so he'll go over there. And this fall, he spent some hours in the combine with his grandpa. I really enjoyed that. And so I'm honestly already looking forward to this spring planting season because I think he'll be excited to go sit in the planter again. Last fall, I would sit with him, or my wife would sit with him in the combine, and he would be really entertained for 2 hours. And this spring, I think he will be able to go sit with grandpa on his own and listen well enough to do that. He's basically just with the family, us as a family unit all the time, and hangs out with his uncles, which are both on the farm too. So everyone is there, but it's hard. There isn't a super clear option if we didn't have that. It would involve a lot of driving. So then we would be adding an hour plus a day of driving if we were going to go to a daycare and drop them off. So that would be hard. And just financially, it is expensive. And so we're very reliant on the fact that we have family support. I don't really know how people do it. It is exponentially hard, especially in rural areas where, again, have to add that driving in, and calculating that all is hard. Yeah, we'll have to keep seeing what comes and what we do in the future. But for now, it's a lot of just family support.
So, what's your favorite thing about raising a kiddo on the farm? And I know my in-laws live across the road, and it's been really great to see the relationship they build between grandparents and grandkids when it's not a special occasion to see them. My kids are somewhere with them right now. There wasn't school today, and for it not to be like a holidays thing that they only see them on Christmas. My in-laws see the kids probably at least 4 times a week. And I think it's so nice, and especially with aunts and uncles in the mix as well, and other cousins and that, to get that variety.
It really is so great, especially as he has grown a bit and is more rambunctious. I love seeing him run around the farm. He is a farm cat lover. He did a lot of chasing of turkeys this past fall. He is curious. He loves any piece of equipment he wants to look at. There's an auction a couple minutes away from the farm, and we've learned that a great toddler activity is driving around the farm auction and rolling the window down, and he like oohs and ahs at all the tractors. And I think about it, I'm like, oh my gosh, what better life for a little guy. He thinks it's so fun. It's so special. And I totally agree with you. It's like there is something so unique and special, and a lot of people don't have this of like having a family village all be around. I really think it is like a gift that he gets to see that side of the family every day and have uncles that are around, and that he's the only grandchild right now. Like it's all attention on him, and it makes holidays a big deal, and he's just so clearly it's so adored by everyone. And it's just like obviously tremendously helpful for us to have a situation where we can eat meals or not only have childcare option, but have other support. That was especially helpful when he was littler, but I'm sure even it will continue to feel important. I can't imagine what it would feel like to raise a child without that kind of support. It would be really hard. And my family is in New England, and I wish they were closer too, but I can't imagine if we were somewhere where like both of our families were far away. It would feel tough.
I know even this morning, my father-in-law feeds calves for us. And so I was chatting with him this morning while I was cleaning the milk house, and he was going to the calf barn, and he was commenting on how I've got older kids, but he enjoys watching our teenagers get off the bus and walk home from the high school bus, that even as they get older, then there's still that mutual support too, right? Where if grandma and grandma need something, I can send one of the kids over and be like, they need their walkway shoveled, or go help grandma with this thing or whatever, and they just can go over and do that. So yeah, it changes as they get older, but it's still part of being part of that village.
And the key parenting question here, have you gotten him a rock pile yet? So we get gravel delivered for the driveway, whatever, and then this fall we got, I don't know if it's like lime screenings or what it is. It's like halfway between sand and rocks. And for the money, I'm not going to buy my kid other toys, because now that it's a little warmer again and it's not frozen solid, he gets off the bus, he drops his backpack somewhere between the road and the barn usually. And then he'll be out in that pile for an hour or two, just digging. My kid's almost 8, and I just feel like a rock pile is probably the best toy we can give them.
I totally understand that. We have a rock garden situation in front of our house. And the other day when it was really warm out, we were like sitting on our porch, and he was entertained for a really long time, just taking the rocks out of the rock garden and piling them. And then I decided that was fine because he was so entertained and it was beautiful. So I was just sitting on the porch sunbathing, and he was taking every rock out. So I was like, he didn't need a different toy. We just moved rocks around. I still haven't cleaned it up, but that's fine. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's just a new configuration.
Yeah, eventually he will restack the rocks. That's fine.
Yeah, and soon enough you can start turning them over looking for bugs, and then that's a whole other fun activity.
Oh, that's yeah. We'll have to clean up the garden area, which would be good.
Yeah. So obviously there's always lots of good stuff around the farm, but we often ask our guests too what their biggest parenting struggle is, because it feels like the things that we share become a little bit easier if we talk about them.
That's a good question. Yeah, I think one thing for me personally is I feel like this past year has been just extraordinarily busy. I feel like I've been in a big moment of growth in the business, but also just personally for me, I've had just a lot of opportunities, and I've been asked a lot. A lot has been asked of me by various organizations and etc. And so I've done more travel in the farm advocacy world that I have since becoming a parent, I would say. And so I struggle with the mom guilt feeling of being really busy, even when I can understand that I'm growing this for our family. I really believe in and hope to be building a better future for our son and all those things. But I would say this winter, especially, that was something I struggled with. Of running a farm is really busy, but also having an off-farm job is really busy. And then add on to that, having all these other obligations, I feel guilty about it. So that's my personal biggest struggle. I've had to work on that and know that he's in a village and so supported. But yeah, I think that's hard. And I know that's a feeling that a lot of moms struggle with, especially like working moms or entrepreneurial moms. It's hard. There's only so many hours in the day.
When it comes to the farm advocacy piece, I know that it takes something important to pull you away from your family. So, what are some of the things that you have been working towards that you feel are worth that time?
I am really involved in the Iowa Farmers Union. So this year I was an Iowa delegate to the National Farmers Union Convention. So that happened just a few weeks ago. It was in New Orleans. And so there's representatives from all the states that have farmers unions that come together and partake in this whole like democratic process to create the policy priorities for 2026 that they then are able to advocate for in DC. And so that was something where I was a couple days away. And for me, being part of Iowa Farmers Union has been really important. I think it's an important voice in the state, and also feel as a young woman farmer, it's important to be part of those spaces that are still pretty male dominated. And the average age of a farmer in Iowa is 30 years older than me and all the things. And so I do really feel like our representation matters and is important. And it's an honor to be asked and to be voted to be a delegate and all the things. And so it feels important to do that. And then I have also been part of the creation of a new advocate network of pasture-based livestock farmers advocating for policies that improve animal welfare and farm viability and market access and all the things. And so I was in North Carolina for a kickoff of that and just have had a lot of things. And I am careful to weigh things. They have to be really important, and it has to be a space that I know the time will be used well. And that feels important for me to be there and can't be done virtually. There's plenty of things that I'm happy to do over Zoom, but sometimes there's things happen and the time is right. And yeah. And then also the Practical Farmers of Iowa conference in January. That's a few days in Des Moines. And I went to the Farmpreneurs week-long strategic sprint, was a week away in Wisconsin. And so it's just been a busy couple months.
Well, I want to commend you for doing those things because, like you said, acknowledging both the importance and, prioritizing those things is not easy. And a lot of us look at maybe who's representing us and think, well, they don't really speak for me, but I don't have time or I can't get away or whatever. And often people can't, but it's great that you and your family are willing to prioritize things and make your voice heard and represent the people who can.
It's a season too, right? Like I've also been like, he's old. Like I wouldn't have been doing this a year ago or even 2 years ago. He was a fresh baby. And so now it's like, okay, like the moment was right, and it won't always be the case, but taking advantage of the spaces where it does feel doable.
I think too it's crucial for kids and for communities to see us committing to doing things outside of parenting and to see that we are humans. My kids still seem a little shocked sometimes when I'm like, I am a person. And they're like, what? But I know too that when they see me prioritizing things, they learn a lot from that. And the whole community I think, sees things differently when they see that this is important enough to me that I will make the time to make it happen rather than leaving it for someone else.
Totally. Yeah, I think about that a lot of just he's young, he may not see this now or remember it now, but I am so much more than just a mother and I want him to see me as a full human with dreams and desires and someone who makes hard choices and fights hard for our family and all of the things. And so practicing that now ensures that he will see it later because it is just part of who I am and what the routine is.
What is a piece of parenting advice that either you've learned along the way or someone shared with you that has made a difference in your parenting journey?
I mean, I think that this is cheesy, but being vulnerable and asking for help has been really an important piece of advice. Like the number of times that we have called my mother in law at night to be like, help, what do we do? It is a lot. And I think prior to having a child, I wouldn't have realized how important that is to just be able to be vulnerable and be like, yes, like I am a parent, I am the adult here, and I don't know what to do. You know, I've called my dad at 10 o'clock at night to be like, what do I do? And just being okay with asking for help all the time and being really vulnerable and being like, oh, do we go to the doctor? Do we not? All these things. I think early on, I was like, oh, we should know, we should be able to figure this out, or we should know what we're doing. And whether those are like blood relations or not, having some type of support network of people you can call and lean on is so critical, and not being embarrassed or ashamed. As humans, we need community and we need support. And like, of course, when you're like figuring out how to raise a small human, like you're going to have a lot of questions. And it's so okay to ask for help, and you're going to do it more times than you think. And, you know, you're going to be sitting there being like, I don't know what to do. Google can only tell you so much and all those things.
I mean, the reality is people have been raising children for generations, and if you ask for help and the advice doesn't feel right to you, then it's not like you have to do it, but we can reach out for sure because there's so much experience out there and none of us have to know how to do it on the first round.
That's something that I find in common too with parenting and farming, is that it can be so nice to see someone who seems like they've got it all together who's also like no idea what's going on. I know, like, going to the practical farmers conferences and talking to folks who've been doing this for 60 years and listening to them say about the stupid things they did this year or the mistakes that were made or the bad things that happened, that like it can be so easy to feel like everyone else got the memo, or like everyone else's life came with some sort of instruction book and maybe you just didn't get it. It's a little disconcerting to find out that nobody's in charge, but it's also nice to know that you're not the only one who's screwing up.
I think I'm always telling myself and telling other people that being a beginning farmer is actually more of a lesson of just learning how to do things wrong and building the tenacity to get back up and do it again, right? And I think there's some similarities in parenting. Hopefully not everything is a lesson in doing something wrong, but you have to keep going, right? You have to figure it out as you go.
Kids and livestock don't care about our expertise. They're just going to do their own thing.
So we asked all of our guests, if you were going to dominate a category at the county fair, what would it be? And categories can be real or made up to ensure that you win.
Oh, that's really a hard question. I would dominate a category that was about how stubborn can you be? Like, who has the most stubborn will to not let something else win? That would be my category that I would win.
Arlene, you missed that Anna and I were discussing the fact that I used to work on a farm where Anna's family visited and her family volunteered like 20 years ago. And I was pretty sure I knew who you were, Anna. And the minute you said that about stubbornness, I know exactly who you are. And I mean that in a good way. That sounds really harsh to be like, you were a tenacious child. Let's put it that way, which is a compliment.
Maybe you remember this too. There was a pig named Uno. He had one eye at heifer. And then I think I remember eating Uno maybe the next year.
Yeah, I remember eating Peter the yak for my first meal at heifer. This is a whole different show. So, yeah, he gored somebody, and you get to gore somebody once, and if you gore somebody a second time, you get turned into cabbage rolls. They were delicious.
Then you become a meal. On that note, yaks and all, we'll move into our cussing and discussing segment. So if you as a listener want to send in yours, you can go to our speak pipe or our email and we'll either play your voice memo or read it out for you. Katie, what do you have to cuss and or discuss this week?
Getting older has been awesome, but it feels kind of like if you're pregnant and you wake up one morning and your bump is popped, and now you're like really showing, like you went to bed and you kind of looked like this. And obviously you've been getting bigger the whole time, but then you wake up and it's like, kapow. I woke up a few weeks ago looking so much like my great grandmother, and it was disconcerting, shall we say. Because, like with kids, like you don't notice them growing up until you're like, where the hell did this teenager come from? I think you were 6 months old like 2 days ago, and now you're talking about getting your driver's license despite the fact that you are 9. And looking older myself has kind of gotten the same vibe that it's like, didn't notice it. And then we're looking at baby pictures of my kids, and my kids are asking who that is in the photo because they don't remember me looking like that. And they don't seem as compassionate as I had hoped for about the fact that I didn't look that old until I had them.
Well, they also don't look the same, though. They've gone from nugget to full grown kids, so things happening.
No, I'm digging getting older, and I don't mind looking older. It was the surprise of it, because what's that saying about boiling a frog? You just don't notice it until you wake up one day and you're like, what is this? Anna, what do you have to cuss and discuss?
Okay, so I guess what I would cuss and discuss this week is I feel really sad that the USDA just cut another big program that was supporting land access for young and beginning farmers. And I am on the board of an organization that was running a program called the New Century Farm Fellow that was funded through this USDA program. And it's been a really devastating week to see. It feels like the horrors persist, and I feel really sad that in a moment where the average age of a farmer is 60, that the Iowa Valley RC&D that was supposed to train farmers just lost their funding with 3 days notice and is now trying to scramble to figure out what to do. And they already had these fellows hired and all these things. So my cussing and discussing is that I feel just devastated that in this moment where land access barriers are so high and the future of farming feels so uncertain, that organizations that are trying really hard to do the right thing and make more opportunities are now once again in a bad position. So that's my grouchiness of the week.
Arlene, what do you have to cuss and discuss?
So there's a big potential infrastructure plan happening in my part of Canada, and they have put out a proposed map. So it's a high-speed rail project. And so they're in the consultation period, which I get, you have to do the consultation. And our farm is on this one swath of a couple of different paths that this high-speed rail project could potentially take. But it might not, or it might. And there are some people who are getting really riled up about it. And it's in the hundreds of billions in terms of a project, like if it were to go through. So I'm torn between the desire to get involved and advocate, but also trying to be realistic about, is it even going to happen? How much energy do I expend on a thing that maybe will never, ever even come to pass? And in theory, I think high-speed rail is a good idea. I don't want to be one of those not in my backyard people, because obviously we want people to be able to get around. It makes sense to have railways that are efficient and effective and can move people where they need to go and use less fossil fuels, all that kind of stuff. But also the prospect of potentially having fields cut up or roads closed and all that kind of stuff, because high-speed rail has to be on a straight path and it doesn't really matter what's in its way. So yeah, I guess I'm just in that place of kind of not enough information and not really sure what to do about it, or if there is anything to do. So I'm just stuck in that in-between place where I don't really know what the consultation means or requires of me. So yeah, that's where I am. Just kind of confused.
It's really hard when you don't know if something is worth trying to figure out, because it may not happen.
Yeah. Because there are definitely people who are losing sleep over it. And I, like you see the groups, and I've seen some public meetings, and like there are people who are like, it's eating them up inside. And I don't want to get to that place because, like I said, if it doesn't happen, then why get into it? But I also understand that the people who do feel strongly about it. So maybe I'll just let them worry about it for me for now. And if it gets further down the path, then we'll deal with that later, I guess. So we want to thank you so much, Anna, for joining us today and sharing this conversation. Can you remind our listeners where they can find you online if they want to learn more about you and your farm?
Yeah, so you can find us online. Our website is overthemoonmeat.com. You can find us on Instagram at overthemoonfarm. And then you can find me on TikTok at farmheranna.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It was great to meet you.
It was so nice to meet you. Thank you both.
Thank you for joining us on Barnyard Language. If you enjoy the show, please support us on Patreon with a donation.
Big thanks go out to our show editor, Krista Paffrath at the Rural Podcast Network.
Please rate and review the podcast wherever you listen, and follow the show so you never miss an episode.
If you want to connect with other farming families, join the private Barnyard Language Facebook group.
We are always in search of future guests for the podcast. If you or someone you know would like to chat with us, get in touch.